Yo, 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 I'm Candy. I be knitting, and today I be showing you an update on one of my big works in progress and also some things I've cast on since the last time we've seen one another. So this is my Vintersol by Steingass, and the last time we were together we talked about reflecting on the last year and also planning for this year, and this is like one of my not only goals for this year, but one of my goals for my knitting career in general. And so the end is in sight, as you can see. The last time we saw each other, I believe just the yoke was done, and I had to undo the provisional cast on in order to continue the sweater. It's cast on at the bottom of the yoke, knit all the way up to the collar, then taken off of waste yarn in order to cast on for or separate for sleeves and body. And as I was saying before, this is like one of my big goals, and obviously I can do this, but I believe if y'all are watching me, y'all probably relate a lot to me. A lot of my knitting time isn't hands-on knitting. The time it takes me to knit something is very little compared to the time it takes me to, for instance, swatch, shop for yarn, think about the pattern, think about the finishing I want to do. And so things tend to take a lot longer than in my mind. I'm like, oh, it's kind of like when you see a construction building going up and you're like, oh, that building's coming up really fast, but then you got to put in the electrical, the piping, and, finish out the drywall and all this kind of stuff. And so we have the framing and the good bones of a sweater here, but I really wanted to pause and think about this because this, like I said, this is like my magnum opus sweater. This is mostly my hand spun. This brown you're seeing is not my hand spun, but this whitish gray, and then this rusty orange is my hand spun. And if you just to reiterate really quickly, this is based on a sweater I saw on Call the Midwife. The Vintersol on Call the Midwife, or the Vintersol by Steingass, was featured on the BBC show Call the Midwife, and I wanted to replicate that sweater. We have since gone off the script a little bit. First thing I changed was the original sweater had an orange color here. I've chosen a rust color. I believe it goes better with my complexion. The next thing you're going to see here is something I saw in the pattern, in the Ravelry patterns. This is a 3-color sweater. There's a main color, and then there's contrast color 1, contrast color 2. My contrast color 1 is this brown color. My contrast color 2 is the white gray color. And I say white gray. This yarn, if you were in person, you would be seeing mostly gray yarn and pops of white because it's hand spun. So every once in a while you get a pop of like just pure white. That's why I said white gray, which sounds like a strange color. But anyway, the brown is the main color. In the pattern, the contrast color, which is the brown here, would have been the collar and all of the ribbing. So all of like the finishing ribbings would have been in that brown color. I immediately, as soon as I opened the pattern, I saw someone else that used a white color as their contrast color too, and they did all of their finishings in contrast color too. And I immediately decided I'm going off pattern. I'm switching it up. So originally this collar is finished off with an I-cord. The I-cord would have been brown if I followed the pattern. Instead, I wanted to do white. I just believe just using a lighter color, it just makes the garment flow a little bit better. I feel like my goal when I wear clothes is usually, I want to elongate myself. I want to look a little bit taller. And so I feel like having a dark color right there at the collar kind of chops things off. And I think it flows really nicely into that white. Same thing with the collar, not the collar, same thing with the sleeves and the body, because you're going to repeat, or you have the option to repeat more color work in the sleeves and in the body, and then you would fade the white background back into the brown, but instead I'm just going to go straight white and have white be the cuffs and the bottom. The other thing that I wanted to do, because I liked this I-cord so much, and traditionally This is my second gen Steingass pattern, my probably 10th sweater at this point, period. At this point, I would have begun shaping for the sleeves, and I would be doing decreases for the sleeve and then going into a 2.5, 2-inch ribbing. And I'm at the point now, and I mentioned this before in my goals for this year, I have a lot of sweaters already, and I don't need many more sweaters. And so I would like to, going forward, do some maybe different stuff here and there to differentiate some of my sweaters. So for instance, you know, I have one ranunculus that's short sleeve, and I have another sweater that's got like no shaping and a cuff here. But for the most part, I'm doing the decreases once every 8 rows down to 52 stitches, whatever the, you know, it's a very formulaic way of making a sweater, and most patterns follow that formula of decreasing and coming into a small ribbing. And I personally like that. I have a cardigan that has very tight ribbing, and the ribbing is like about 4 inches. And I like that, but also, you know, I want to try different things and have different things in my closet, and I don't want to have 10 versions of the same sweater. And so I say all that to say this. What I'm doing here is I'm going to have a straight sleeve, not many decreases. I'm going to go into the color work, and then instead of doing ribbing, I'm just going to knit plain stockinette in my contrast color too, my white color. And then I'm just going to do an I-cord bind off. And so that's going to give me kind of like almost like a balloon sleeve. I'm not going to do increases, but I'm not going to tighten it around my wrist. And because I have rather thin wrist, it is going to have a ballooning effect to it. And then I'm going to go into that I-cord, and I just think that's going to be just another silhouette I can pull out of my closet. Also, I like a nice like bracelet length right about here. I'm going to go a little longer with these sleeves, and I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. I'm not quite done with the bottom. What I did here was I finished one ball of yarn, and then I put it on just an extra 40-inch cord so I could try it on and see where I was at for length. And because I was done with the ball of yarn, I didn't have any yarn hanging here, I went ahead and started on my sleeve just so I could test that effect out. I am doing a couple of decreases just because I'm doing that color work on the bottom, and so I needed to decrease a few stitches in order for my multiple to be correct. But I'm going to just try out that idea with one sleeve, see how the sleeve looks, and then I'll try it on the body. Also getting an idea, because this is hand spun and I have a limited amount of this yarn, an idea of how much yarn one sleeve takes, and then I can kind of plan out the rest of the sweater from there. So that is the Vintersol. And this is kind of, like I said, this has kind of been slow going because I want to make it an exact type of way. And so I haven't been working on this as much because I'm, you know, really trying to think through what I need to do and how I want it to come out. And I have just a very specific set of steps I want to take with it. And so I was just like, so what do I want to do while I'm thinking through that, making sure that's going to work. Also, I had to wash and block this. And what I did was, my other item I had in my knitting queue was a sweater by Stephen West. Hold on to that thought, because I was just like, okay, I want to start this Stephen West sweater because I decided I own 3 volumes of Stephen West patterns at this point. So I really want to be consistently knitting from that. And usually I do shawls, and I was just like, well, I don't really need another shawl. I have a lot of shawls. Let me try a sweater, a Stephen West sweater. So I had this sweater in mind, but I was just like, I'm kind of on a sleeve on this sweater. Do I really feel like starting another sleeve? Because the Stephen West sweater I want to make is knit one side to the other. So it starts with a sleeve. And I was like, I just put down that sweater because I didn't feel like doing a sleeve. What am I going to do? And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to knit a Stephen West shawl because I have free will. So yeah, let's cast on a shawl, because I can always, that's like if I couldn't knit anything else for the rest of my life, I would knit Stephen West shawls. It's like my favorite thing to knit. And it's also kind of just helps me get into a certain zone. Like, it's just my happy place when it comes to knitting. So I have to get the right tote bag. I love a good tote. I have like one like project bag that's actually like intentionally, this is a knitting project bag and that was a gift, but for the most part I just use totes and everything kind of fits very nicely in there. And then when I want to go to knit, I just fold that sucker down and then it creates like a nice little bowl with all my yarn. So the pattern I decided on, I went through, I have West Knits Best Knits Volume 1. Yeah, this is from Volume 1. And I did the knit and slide because specifically I didn't want to do like a big 5-color situation. I was looking through all the different yarns I have and I really couldn't see a 4 or 5-color shawl. And so I decided on the Knit and Slip by Stephen West. This is actually the right side, which doesn't really matter one way or the other once I tell you how this shawl is made. And this is the Knit and Slide by Stephen West. It is a top, oh, this is upside down. Top down crescent shaped shawl. The original pattern, there's a small version and a large version. The large version takes 4 colors. I'm doing the small version, and I was assured in the Ravelry notes that the small version actually comes out to a very nice size. I'm doing the small version, which calls for 3 colors. I decided to do 2 colors because I'm kind of in a stash busting mode, and I was like, I really don't feel like cracking open a bunch of skeins and then having a lot left over. And so this is a top-down shawl wherein you stripe 2 colors, and then in the last section you add a 3rd color in lace, and then you finish it off with your color A. And so you do A, B, and then you have C in lace, and then you finish off with A. And color C was gonna take like something like maybe like 90 yards, something like that, something very minuscule that really wasn't gonna use that much yarn. And this is, I was wanting to use some of my more expensive hand-dyed yarn. And so I was just like, let me do something where I'm gonna use a good amount of a whole skein of yarn. So I decided to do 2 colors because I have a lot of this Virginia base from Urban Girls Yarn, who went out of business last year, and I got a bunch of this on sale from my local reuse store. And so I have this, which is, the color is Bee's Knees. I knew it had something to do with bees because it's bright yellow, and this is 480 yards. So she has this, she had this fingering weight that came in 125 gram skeins, and 480 yards is the exact amount of yardage for color A and color C. So I should be able to get all the way through this shawl with 1 ball for A and for B and C. And then my color A is this color here. This is Bad Sheep yarn. I got this on a family trip from Dixie Knits when we went to Pensacola, Florida. And this is Bad Sheep yarn, and the colorway is Wild Iris, and this is 75-25, 462 yards. And so I should have more than enough to do a 2-color shawl. And the way this shawl is set up, you knit each right side row twice, wherein you knit with color A, and you have our lovely circular knitting needles. And so you knit across with color A, you don't turn, you turn your work, but then you go back and then you knit the same row with color B. And so you get 1 stripe, not usually, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this, but I'm assuming y'all are knitters. It's been a very long week, I'm very tired. So you end up with 1 stripe. So Stephen West recommendation is you can do 2 very similar colors and get a very nice blend of 2 yarns, or you can use 2 high contrast colors like I've done here, wherein we have it's got blues and greens in it, but you're seeing a lot of purple in here, and that is the complementary color to this yellow. So we're getting a lot of high contrast areas in here. Yellow, the yellow is my color B, and you're getting a lot of that color B because it's solid, and so it's bouncing out so much more. And the color B tends to be these pearl ridges. A lot of the color A is landing where you're seeing stockinette because you get 2 rows of pearl ridges, 2 rows of the V stockinettes. And I like it. The tough part with buying a lot of hand-dyed yarns, a lot of variegated skeins, is that eventually, like, unless you buy huge sweater quantities, but the problem with buying one skeins and then, you know, doing something like this is something's got to give. And so something had to be the star, so the yellow ends up being the star. This is a beautiful hand-dyed yarn. If you really wanted to show it off, maybe like a hat or a simple little kerchief or cowl or something like that, or you buy a whole sweater quantity and do a whole sweater of it, but you're not getting as much of it here. But this is the price you pay when you're someone like me who buys, you know, one skein here, one skein there, and then you have to like kind of make it work. One of them has to be a support player sometimes. I also have just a random mini skein from my stash, and this is just a yellow, and it's got a little bit of sparkle in it. And so I was thinking, if I do run out of this, it's going to be, if I'm tight on yardage, which I shouldn't be, I can always just start to stripe this in, and this should get me most of the way there. I usually find that patterns are really generous, or at least from the designers I've tried, especially Stephen West. I might be a tighter knitter than he is. I don't always gauge swatch when it comes to, well, I never gauge swatch when it comes to shawls, but I rarely go back and check my gauge when I'm done with my shawl. I might be a tighter knitter than him, or he might just be very generous as far as making sure you have enough yarn. So I've never had a problem with running out of yarn. If anything, I have too much yarn left over, and that's why I wanted to kind of keep it tight. But if not, I think that'll be kind of seamless, and then I'll have a little bit of sparkle in there. So that's that. I've been having a lot of fun with, and this is just something very, very easy that I can pick up. There's like just these little eyelets. I'm at the point where I have hundreds of stitches, so I'm not so much counting stitches. I'm not really worried about stitch count. It's pretty easy to see where you need to be because you have to do 1 row each of the different colors. I just have a stitch marker to represent the front, so I know which side is the wrong side, which side is the wrong side. And yeah, this is it's knit and slip if you're looking for, or knit and, I keep wanting to say knit and slip because of slip stitches, but it's knit and slide. If you're looking for like a very easy entry level Stephen West shawl, because you know, some people are like intimidated by techniques and stuff like that, but this is literally all knitting, and then the eyelets are a bunch of yarn overs. And then I haven't done the lace area yet, but it seems pretty easy. And then I think it has a picot bind off, which I've done before, so I should be fine there. So it's been very low stakes, very easy to count where I'm at. And even if I miss a place, I don't, as long as I'm on pattern, because what happens is you have yarn overs at the beginning. And so as long as I have those yarn overs there, the stitch count should be fine. So that's that. So back to what I was saying before about how, like, oh, my Stephen West project that I'm going to do as my Stephen West project of the year is going to be a sweater. I did end up casting on the sweater. I did not get very far. And I decided on the amazing Technicolor Dream sweater by Stephen West. And it is fingering weight held double. And the idea being the effect of the marled yarn. And he gives you 2 options. One of them is, you know, just get scraps and hold them, you know, and then when one falls, you know, one runs out, grab another one. You can do stripes where, you know, you hold color A and B together, then you hold color C and D together, then E and F together. I chose the other option, which he talks about, wherein you hold one color, A, you hold it with B. Then you drop A, you have B, you pick up C. And so that gives you more of a fade effect. because I have, once again, I told y'all I had all that Urban Girl yarn that I got last year. And I wasn't able to get, you know, necessarily sweater quantities. And so this is a way of getting some similar colors together and making them work together more harmoniously than the last one was more high contrast. This is what I was talking about, where if you have some things that are in a similar color family, marling them together gives them the look of, you know, one unified yarn. And so I started here with The Emperor Has No Clothes and Fragile Like a Bomb. This is my color A, this is my color B. This is my lightest color out of the 5 or 6 colors I picked out for this sweater. I weighed this color as I went, and I wanted to use a quarter of this because if I used, I want to use half of each yarn because the sweater is I want the sweater to match. And so I use half on this side, half on the other side. With this, I wanted to use a quarter because I wanted to stop and drop this yarn so I get that marled effect. If I did a half of this and a half of this, it wouldn't work that way. So I did a quarter of this. And then I was left with my Fragile Like a Bomb, and then I picked up Coral Gables and started holding this together. And so what I have here, and I have spinning fiber there, is, oh my goodness, my color A, B, and then I have B, C, which should look very seamlessly faded together. And you'll see more of the effect as the sweater comes together. And yeah, you start with one sleeve, and then you cast on for the front, then you start another sleeve, then you cast on for the other front, then you sew the fronts together, you pick up stitches in the back, and then you do the back together. And so I'm just being very cognizant of having enough yarn so that it looks like one unified sweater. It is moss stitch. It's going to be all over moss stitch. At first I was thinking I would just do stockinette, but I thought it was going to be too busy with the moss stitch, but it actually looks really nice. I did mark my increases, and then I also marked where I changed my color so that I can just follow the same thing on the second sweater. I'm almost at the point where I can cast on for my front because it's kind of like almost like a drop shoulder situation. And also, I did not do the ribbing. That's something I always do when I'm doing things like this that aren't top down, because then I can go back. If for some reason the length isn't where I want it to be, I can always go back and pick up stitches and knit my ribbing. Also, I'm toying with the idea of not doing ribbing at all, similar to what I was talking about with my Vintersol sweater, of just having a different look. I was actually thinking about maybe doing an I-cord on this. I think it looks really pretty like this, with just no edging here. I did like a long tail cast on, and it actually looks really clean. The only thing with that is that I had to, he has you knit this sleeve to 15 inches, and I was just like, that's gonna be bananas. What are you talking about? And then I had to realize, oh, I skipped the ribbing, so I need to subtract how much I would do for the ribbing in order to make sure my sleeve length is correct, or, you know, to your desired length. He says to knit it to 15 inches or 1 inch past your elbow because you're gonna have that drop shoulder look. And so, yeah, I might just knit this, you know, just to the length that I want it, and then just leave this edge like this and just skip the ribbing. I was thinking about, in the pattern, it's one of those long ribbed situations, and he has an optional thumb hole. And I told y'all last time, like, generationally speaking, I was like, I do like a thumb hole, but maybe it is time to do something a little bit more modern and something that doesn't look like anything else in my closet. So I might leave it like this, have like an almost like a cropped, not cropped, I guess, you know, I guess bracelet length sleeve, not too long of a sleeve. And because the sweater itself is also cropped, like the sweater is actually cropped, it's just very wide and the body isn't too long. And so I think that might be a good look. And so that's where I'm at with that. I just kind of pick this up every once in a while because it is kind of getting tedious. After I did all the increases, it was just kind of like, moss stitch. This is a good practice because the pattern, they tell you what moss stitch is, but he also says you have to know how to do your increases and decreases. Well, just increases here, and keep it in pattern. He doesn't give you like, oh, row 2, lift, make 1 left. He just tells you, hey, do your increases and do moss stitch at the same time. And so if you're not familiar with reading your stitches and reading your work, this will help you brush up on that. Just knowing how certain patterns play out in the round versus flat, when to knit your knits and purl your purls and purl your knits. This is a good practice at that, because you'll mess around and end up creating ribbing instead of moss stitch if you're not paying attention. And there's also periods where, like right now, my end of round, you end up with an even number of stitches, and the way the increases work, basically you have a purl right beside a purl, you have a knit right beside a knit. And so if you just be like, oh, moss stitch is knit 1, purl 1, and then it's purl 1, knit 1, if you just do that, you'll end up making ribbing. So just something to be cognizant of. Follow me for more pro tips. Yeah, something to think about. I'm going to leave it there. I just wanted to kind of chat with y'all right quick, check in with a couple of new cast-ons. If you like this video, like this video. If you don't like this video, like it anyway. It takes 2 seconds to hit the thumbs up. Comment below, what are you working on? What do you want to see more of? Or just say hi, and I'll say hi back to you. I appreciate everyone who does comment, everyone who does like, everyone who does subscribe, everyone who does share. I love it all. Also, anyone who wants to hit me up on Instagram, I'm candibknittin on Instagram. I'm candibknittin on Ravelry. That's something I kind of got into this last year. I actually have been adding projects to my Ravelry. It's not perfect. It's going to take a long time because I didn't use Ravelry for, I have a Ravelry, but I didn't use it properly. And so I tried to go back and add a bunch of stuff, and that just was not working. And so I'm trying to, like, as new things come along, add new things when I go shopping, put things into my stash when I start a new project, add things on there. So I am trying to be more active on there. I'm trying to add helpful project notes, because I get a lot, like I said about the Vintersol, I try to add notes to my projects because I find other people's projects so helpful. I find other people's pictures to be so helpful. So shout out to the Ravelry warriors doing the real work. You can also email me, candibknittin@gmail.com. Until next time, peace.